Oh yeah. Alright. How to make $1 million. First step, get a job.
Ooh. I don't know about all that.
Sorry.
You can win the lottery.
How are you going to buy lottery tickets? Ask your parents. So your job is asking your parents for money.
Or just find a dollar on the floor.
Your job is looking around on the floor.
No, it's not yours.
All right. Second step: spend less than you make. And the third step is invest your money. So you really, yeah, you could invest your money in lottery tickets, as long as you don't spend that dollar on the floor at the vending machine. Then you could invest in buying a lottery ticket. But that said, lotteries are a really horrible investment. There's a lot better investments that you could do. So let's look at an example of how we can make $1 million by following these steps. So let's say we take $200 a paycheck. So our payment's going to be $200 per paycheck. So we get paid every other week, so biweekly. So 52 weeks in a year, divide by 2, we get 26. And our periods per year is 26. And if we do this for 33 years, and we get a 9% interest, 9% return on our investments. We solve for the future value, you get $1,062,000. So there's your $1 million.
Wait, for how many years?
33.
Oh, it's just like,
So by the time you're your parents' age, you could be a millionaire. So why doesn't everybody do that? If it only costs $200 a paycheck. So anybody who works already, like if you were working full time, how easy would it be to save $200 out of a paycheck? Pretty easy, especially if you stay on living at home. Like there's a lot of people that make over $200 a day. So you know, like a server or something like that, you could easily get that. All right, so why isn't everybody a millionaire if it's so easy to save $200 a paycheck? I think honestly, a lot of people don't realize what they're giving up. So when they overspend, so there's a lot of people who make a lot more than me who spend a higher percent of their income. And I think what happens is as you make more money, you don't realize what you're giving up by spending all of it. So this is just to kind of show how possible it is to do. Let's say you made minimum wage, which actually it just recently went up again, up to $11, but we'll say $10.50, so I don't have to do it. So $10.50 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year, you're making $21,000, almost $22,000. So most people are going to spend $21,000, or maybe even more than that. And so what happens is they don't save anything. the trick is we need to spend. So if we take out the money that we're going to save, so let's say we want to save 20%. So we take away $4,000. So we live like we only make $17,000. And so that's the trick. Because there's lots of people, like I have friends who make over 100,000 and they don't save as much as I do. And the reason is that they spend it. And so they hang out with a lot of other people who make over 100,000. All their coworkers are making that. All their coworkers are spending that kind of money. And so then they feel like they need to spend that same type of money. And so no matter how much you make, you're probably going to be around a lot of people who make more than you and a lot of people who make the same as you. And so you're going to feel like you need to spend as much as you make. And so that's why no matter how much you make, you end up, most people end up spending it. And so the trick is you just take off all of the money that you want to save and then live like the people who make that amount. So for example, if I was making this $22,000 a year, if I live like I make $17,000 a year, and I hang out with some people who make $17,000 a year and do the kind of same types of things they do, now I can easily save $4,000 a year. But all right, so there's a lot of people. It's like, oh man, if I was making $100,000 a year, like I would easily be able to save half. The thing is if we compare ourselves to the world, we are those people. So if you look at the median household income, it's less than $10,000, which means that less than half of the people, less than half of the houses make less than $10,000 a year. And the median person income, so half the people in the world make less than $3,000 a year. So, you know, if we're like, man, I can't even live off of 17,000, how do you think those people who live off of less than 3,000 think about us? You know, like a while back we had the thing where everybody was complaining about the top 10% and how much money they make and how they should be giving more back to us. Well, if we look at the world, guess who's in the top 10%? Even our poverty, you know, even making minimum wage, you're in the top 10%, you know. So most of the world thinks of us as that way. But basically the point is that don't feel like, oh, if I made more money, that it would happen. It's it doesn't necessarily work that way. You have to consciously have the mindset where you spend less. Okay. So I wanted to show you this to kind of show you how important a year makes. So a lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to graduate soon in a couple of months, but you know, I'm not going to be really situated with my job yet, so I'll start saving later. You should already start saving now. And so I'm going to show you why. So let's take this example here, where we're going to do 50 years at 8% interest, starting with nothing, and we're going to put in 4,368. So that was 20% of the minimum wage earners' income. All right, and then we're going to do one period per year, so we're going to put that in once per year. So if I solve, I get $2,506,000. Okay, so now let's add just one year to that. So I'm going to put in an extra $4,000. What's going to happen? It goes up to $2,700,000. It went up by $200,000. So if you wait just one extra year before you start saving, that costs you $200,000. So that's why it's so important to start right away. The other way that this is really important is look at this. So let's say I have the $2,500,000. Or let's say I have the $2,700,000, right? What if I spent $200,000 that year? So I take out $200,000 to live on for the year. That's going to drop me down to $2,500,000. That $2,500,000 over the course of that year is going to grow back to $2,700,000. So I spent $200,000 that year, and I ended up at the exact same spot where I started. Without working, without putting any money in, without doing anything, I was able to spend $200,000. So the really cool thing about putting your money towards this, what's really powerful about it is that it allows you to spend money without having to work anymore. So once you get up to this point, you can do this for the rest of your life. Every single year, you spend $200,000, it grows $200,000. Spend $200,000, it grows $200,000. Spend $200,000, it grows $200,000. You're not working anymore. You don't have to. And what's really cool is when you die, you still have that $2,500,000 or $2,700,000. So you give that to your kid, and now they can spend $200,000 for the rest of their life and not have to work. And then they can do that and then give it to their kid's kid, and then that kid's kid, and then on and on and on forever. You basically can set your family up forever. So that's pretty cool. So what if you don't really need $200,000 to live off of? So it's like, hey, I don't even spend $200,000 a year. I'm happy with less than that. So now you don't have to work as long, and you can set up that same thing. So here's a chart, and what's cool is it doesn't matter how much money you make. It just matters how much you save. So if I'm making $100,000 and I'm saving $20,000 a year, that's the same as if I'm making minimum wage and saving $4,000 a year. I can get set up to where my money, my investments pay for my living expenses for the rest of my life, the same number of years. So if I save 20%, it doesn't matter how much I make. So if we look at these examples, most people save between 0 and 5%. So if you're saving 5%, it's going to take you 66 years of working until you get to that point to where your money makes as much as you spend each year. If you increase how much you save an extra 5% from 5 to 10, it drops down the amount of years you have to work from 66 down to 51. So that's a 15-year drop. So that's 15 years of working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That you don't have to do. So you think like, if you're making $20,000 a year, 5% of that is what, like $1,000? So you have to ask yourself, is spending that $1,000 a year, which, if we divide that out, is spending that extra $20 a week, is that worth 15 years of working, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year? So you can see as you save more, the amount of years that you have to spend working drops lower and lower. So here's a graph of it. And you can see it's very steep at the beginning, so just a little bit more savings drops down the amount of years you have to work a lot. And you can see the formula here if you ever want to plug in different numbers or impress your friends. So here, like you can see, like if you get down to like, so this is the amount of years that you have to work. This is what your savings percentage is. So you can see here, if you get to like 50% savings, that's going to be only like 17 years you have to work. And then you're set up, like we were in the example, where your money makes enough to cover all of your expenses. And not only that, with this chart, it factors in inflation and things like that. So it actually grows more than what you spend, so that your account can grow with inflation. All right. So the first step, so that we can do this, is get a job. So hopefully after seeing that, you're actually motivated that you're actually going to get this money. Because a lot of people, that you think like, hey, getting $1 million, like that's motivating enough. But most people, they're not. They're not going to do the things it takes to get the $1 million. All right, so first step, get a job. Your income is directly related to the value you provide to the marketplace. So a lot of people think like, oh, like I get paid for my time or things like that. But that's really not the case. You get paid for the value you put into that time. And so like if I go to McDonald's and I go work there, and I'm only putting in $5 of value to the company, they can't afford to pay me. They can't afford to pay me $10 an hour because they're going to be losing business on hiring me. So they're not going to be able to stay in business, or they have to fire me. And so maybe if everybody who they want to hire doesn't provide as much value as they have to pay them, then they have to replace them with like robots or something like that. And so we need to learn that it's not like the government's job to kind of set what the wages are. It's not the company that does that. It's how much value are the people providing. And so like when we raise minimum wage, so now we raise up to $11, if McDonald's workers aren't providing $11 worth of value, they're going to get replaced. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. Like we're seeing more of those like kiosk things. And so what we need to do is we need to figure out how can we provide more value. And then that way they can pay us more, or we can start our own business and have people pay us. So when we start our own business, we want to look at what's the place where I can provide the most value. Because when I get skills that allow me to provide more value to people, people are willing to pay me more. And that's how you make more money. So there's a saying, it's if you grade a fish on how well it climbs trees, it's always going to fail, right? And it's always going to think it's a failure. So if you're a fish and you try and get a job climbing trees, you're not providing much value. You're crappy at that job. And so you're not going to get paid well. But that doesn't mean that you can't get paid well. It just means that you chose the wrong career path. So we're all different. And we all have different skills. We have all different interests. And we need to figure out, if I'm a fish, how can I get paid for swimming or breathing underwater or something that I'm going to be good at or that I enjoy? And so that's what we need to do right now, is think about, hey, what am I good at? What could I spend all day doing and love my life? Because if you spend all day doing something, you're going to get really good at that. And so you're going to be a lot better than all the people who are just doing it for money, because you actually enjoy it. You're going to be looking up things outside of work hours to get better at it. You're going to be interested. You're going to develop those skills. And once we have those kind of things, we're going to look at, are there any careers or any people that make good money that do something using those skills or those interests? So, if I'm interested in math, I'm like, hey, are there any jobs that are good with math? If I'm interested in socializing with people, are there any people that make a lot of money that spend a lot of time talking with other people? maybe a salesperson or a server or something like that. Maybe I'm really into cooking. Are there any jobs that pay really well for cooking? And so we want to look at what kind of jobs pay really well for the things that I like to do or I'm good at. And a lot of times those are the same. Because you're normally going to like things that you're good at, and you're normally going to get good at things that you like because you spend so much time on it. And once you find kind of careers in those areas, can you develop your skills to provide more value? So is there a way that I can use my skills or get skills that people want? So is there something that people would pay me more for? So maybe I'm a salesman and I develop a lot of skills. Like I really like talking to people and I'm a good salesman, and I sell like cell phones or something like that. And so I can make decent money on that. But if I was selling houses or cars, I could make way more money, and that would provide more value to people. So maybe I need to develop skills into a different area. Or maybe if I was good at selling houses, but then a lot of people are not good with getting loans. So if I got good at setting them up with loans so that they can buy houses, maybe I can make a whole lot more than if I just know how to sell houses. So basically, if you kind of learn an extra skill that you can add into it to make it more worthwhile for people to go see you versus someone else. Or maybe I make cell phone cases and I learn how to make them more, I learned how to, maybe you can make plain ones, or maybe you could figure out, hey, what do the people around here like to have on their case? And so then I add that extra piece in, and then it becomes more valuable to people. People are willing to pay more for it. Another thing to think about is a lot of times for you to kind of figure out, hey, what are people willing to pay? One of the good ways is to actually just get hired as a normal job. So ideally, we want to figure out, do it directly to our customers. Because when you work for somebody else, it's easy to lose sight of that value relationship. So as a teacher, my students and my parent and the parents of you guys are, you're not directly paying me. And so I don't have to convince you guys to pay me money to stand up here. And so then I kind of lose that, I get a little separation between the value I provide and why I'm getting paid. And so it's easy for me to be like, hey, I'm going to get paid either way. I could be as lazy as possible, and I'm going to get paid the same. And so there's that separation. And so when you work for an employer, sometimes you lose sight of that. And that's why if you guys realize that it's the value you provide, you're going to get promoted a lot more and get paid a lot more. And you kind of want to set yourself up into a position where when you work harder, you get paid more. And so you can either get promotions because you develop more skills, or you just get commissions or things like that. And that's why getting your own business is very important, because when I tutor people, I have to convince those students or their parents, hey, pay me so that I can help your kid. And so now that value is there. I see, hey, if I get better at this, I can charge more for what I do. And so when you start your own business, you see that. But sometimes it's hard to start your own business. So a good way to do that is you just work for another company. So you work for somebody, and hopefully you start developing skills. You're like, hey, people are willing to pay me to, flip burgers, or people are willing to pay me to mow their lawn or something. So my first job was mowing lawns. And so then what I could do is I start off mowing lawns for a company. But then I realized, hey, I could find my own clients and mow their lawns myself, and now I take all of the profit. And so what I did was I developed skills by working for an employer that I then can use to start my own business. And that way I can be more profitable. So back to what we were talking about here, to get a job, Nobody's gonna hire me if I'm like, hey, I want to get paid a lot, but I want to just show up whenever I want, and I want to, you know, play on my phone while I'm working, and I don't really want to talk to anybody or like do any work. Can you hire me? And so if you look from the employer's eyes, that's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So you want to think about, hey, how can you be the type of person that somebody's going to want to hire? That's just something to consider, you know, like you probably want somebody who's going to work hard, somebody who's going to learn things quickly, somebody who's going to be proactive in doing things. So, you know, if they see like a mess on the floor or something, you know, they're like, hey, our customer's not going to like that. And so they pick it up. They don't wait for the manager to be like, hey, can you pick that up? They just do it themselves. Things like that. And if you're thinking like an owner, you're going to automatically do that because you're like, hey, I want to make this company do well. How can I make them do well? Because when you learn those skills, then you can bring it onto your own business. All right. Next. So spending less than you make. So there's lots of people who make tons and tons of money who still don't save. And the reason is that they haven't learned to spend less than they make. So when we spend less than we make, we end up actually having to work less to buy the same amount of things. So if I want to buy like a $100,000 car, if I bought it right when I graduated high school and I didn't have much savings, I would have had to take a whole lot of debt. And so I would end up having to pay interest on that. I might pay $300,000 when it's all said and done. And so to make $300,000, I'm going to have to work a whole lot more hours. But if instead I wait to buy that $100,000 car, you know, until I make, you know, if I wait till I save up $1 million, I don't even have to work at all to buy that car. My $1 million makes $100,000. I spend it on the car. I still have $1 million. So the more you save, the less you're going to have to work. The less hours it'll take you to buy the things you want. So if I wait till I save up $1 million, I don't have to work any hours to buy that car. All right. Second, there's a thing called a hedonic treadmill, which basically says that when you buy things, it makes you less happy. So when you try and buy new fancy things, it makes you less happy. So let's say I want a new phone, right? So I buy top of the line phone, and I get it, and it's really nice. And then it's brand new, right? The next day, it's not brand new anymore. It's used. And within like, you know, like a week or a month or so, now that's just your normal phone, right? It's not brand new. It's not fancy anymore. It's just your phone. You get used to it. And so what happens is, let's say I'm happy at this level. I buy a phone. I'm happier, but now I need to be at this level to be happy because over time I adapt to it, and now I'm used to being at this level. And so now to be happy, to get that little spike up in happiness, actually I should do it like this. So I'm happy when I buy it, and then over time I get used to it and I'm back to normal. And then I'm like, hey, I'm not happy anymore, I'm not up there. So then I have to buy a new phone, and it spikes my happiness. And then it gets old and I'm used to it again. And so what happens is my happiness, I keep on getting adapted. But what's the problem is that I keep on needing nicer and nicer things to maintain just that base level of happiness. So this red line is how much I'm spending on stuff. So I had this level of phone, I bought a nicer phone, then I have this level of phone, then I buy a nicer phone, I have this level of phone. But my happiness is staying the same. But the expense of the things I'm buying is getting more and more. So same thing with a car. It's like, oh, I have a used like crappy car, or no car at all, and then I get a used crappy car. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so happy. But then I'm like, man, this car is like really old and crappy. And so then I buy a nicer car, and then I get used to that, and then I'm like, see my friends with like a Mustang or something. All right. And so you'll see this with rich people, like they'll like take pride in not being happy with things. So they'll be like, oh, that's Arrowhead bottled water? I don't drink that. Like, that's beneath me, you know, like, and so like, yeah, it's disgusting. Right. And so like they complain about things like that, or like, oh, that car's only a Lexus? I wouldn't be caught dead driving something like that. And so you know, and so that's funny for us, but you know, there's probably people, you know, those people making less than $3,000 a year, they're like, oh, enough food to be full. You know, like, and so like they're looking at us, and you know, we have like air conditioning and food, and like nice food, not just like, you know, rice. And they're looking at us and thinking like, hey, like these guys are so rich, how could they be complaining about, you know, the type of water they're drinking? Like, I don't even have water, you know, like, and I have to walk like 10 miles just to get some like dirty water with like bugs in it and dirt and all sorts of diseases in it.
Chemical water.
Yeah. And so they're looking that same way at us. And so, so we realize like, hey, that's just something natural that we do. And so the way that we get out of that is we realize that we have it good already. So any given moment, there's lots of good things happening to you right now and lots of bad things happening right now. So there's lots of things I can be happy for, like, hey, like we're in a sheltered area. It's a nice temperature in here. I'm not thirsty. I'm not hungry. I have clothes. I'm around good people. So there's lots of good things that are happening. Or I could think about what's complaining. Hey, my grade's not as high as I want to be. Or, oh, like I wish it was like slightly warmer. I'm slightly cool right now. Or, you know, I wish I could be doing something different right now. Or something like that, to where there's lots of bad things happening and lots of good things happening. And you can only focus on one. So you can focus on what's good in your life or what's bad. And the secret to being happy is you just think about the things that are good. Because you have the option to think of either. No matter how bad you have it, it could be worse, which means that you have something good no matter how bad it is. And so we will kind of want to develop that skill of being happy with what we have. Another trick to that is every day think of a couple of things. Like, so when you wake up in the morning or at the end of the day, think about, hey, what are a few good things that I'm happy about in my life? And try and think of different ones each day. So it's like, you know, if you keep on adding to that list, you have to spend all day searching for, hey, what are some things good things about my life that I haven't mentioned already? And so you get in the habit of looking for the good parts of your life. All right, so it's like, oh, I have running water. That's a good thing. Oh, this person did something nice for me today. That was a good thing. Oh, I had some good food today. Like, that was a good thing. Whatever it is. Another thing is we want to get out our priorities. So what happens is a lot of times people spend on things that matter less to them, and we'll get into that more. And then the last one is set it up automatically. So in both cases, we're spending money on things that don't really make us happier. And by automatically saving, you're going to automatically eliminate some of that spending that you're not really noticing. And what happens is you don't notice that you're taking that money out. It's just gone, and you're like, hey, what was I spending that money on? Like, I don't even know. So out of your paycheck, you have it automatically come out, and then just take a little bit out, and then if you don't really notice it a whole lot, then like just keep on taking it out until you're like, oh, I really wanted to do this. This was something important, and I don't have enough money. And then you back it up, and you take just slightly less than that out of it. So basically, you keep on ratcheting it up. So you're like, oh, I'm saving 5%. Oh, let's try 10. Let's try 15. Let's try 20. Let's try 25. And you get to like 50 or something, or 70, and you're like, oh, now I'm not able to go out with my friends, and now it's really important to me that I do that. And so then you drop it back down, and then that's your savings rate. And you'll be surprised at how high you can get this up before you really start noticing it. All right. So one of the tricks is we need to work on being happy in a lot of conditions. So for me, like, if I don't have like a fancy bottle of water, I'm not going to be unhappy. Like, I'm still going to be happy. It's like, oh, it's nice drinking, filtered water, and it tastes good. I prefer that over the other, but it's not a big deal if I don't have it. Where that rich person who complains, if they have even like lower tier bottled water, they're not going to be happy. So like, I can be equally as happy as them, but if things go bad and let's say they didn't bring enough of their fancy bottled water, I can go drink out of a water fountain and still be happy. Where that rich person is going to be miserable. Like, they're either going to be very thirsty, or they're going to be like, oh, this tastes so bad. And so what I'm doing is I'm developing my skills like a muscle. You need to train it. So you need to practice being happy in different conditions. So like, sometimes like I'll purposely make things more difficult for myself. Like, oh, I'm going to drive today, in the middle of summer. Today I'm not going to use the air conditioner though. And so like, I'm going to feel that heat and practice and think about like, hey, I can still be happy with this even though it's really hot. And so then that way, the next time I drive and I have the air conditioner, it feels really good. I'm like, oh, this is really, really nice, and I notice it. Where if every day I drive with the air conditioner, it's just normal, and I don't appreciate it. So sometimes it's good to practice kind of being happy with bad circumstances. So anytime something bad happens, instead of getting mad about it, be like, oh, this is a good time to practice being happy in tougher situations. And then you also want to work on reducing your impulse to buy things. So a lot of times people think, oh, what's something, this is cool, or this would be really useful. It's like, oh, I could buy this appliance that you take an egg and it cracks it and scrambles it and then cooks it for you. And they're like, oh, that would be useful. Like, I eat scrambled eggs a lot. And it's like, so a lot of people will buy it. The thing is that's not going to make me more happy. So like, I have a higher level before I buy something. Because that egg scrambling machine, I could just as easily crack my own egg and scramble it, use a fork or something, and then put it on the pan and cook it. Things that I already have. Like, I don't need that extra thing to be happy. So what I think about before I buy anything is it possible for me to be happy without buying this? And if it is, then I don't need to buy it. And by doing that, I've cut my spending to almost nothing. So like, it's very rare that there's something that I see that I'm like, oh, I need this to be happy. And so I'm able to be happy, and I'm able to save lots of money while still being happy. So that's something you should really maybe think about when you buy things. Is just think about, do I need this to be happy? Like, could I be happy without this? So budgeting is really just setting your priorities. So you're going to want to think of some things that are important to you, like to have now, and then a little bit, and then in further into the future. And then you want to make sure that you're not spending on things that aren't on that list until you have all of those things taken care of. So for example, we kind of brainstormed a few ideas of things that we want to spend money on. And what we want to do is we get this list of all these things that we want, and then we're just going to prioritize what's most important to me. So I really want to be able to eat, like I don't want to starve to death. So I'm going to make sure I have enough money for food. We're like, oh, I want to really make sure that I have a place to stay, and so that's really important to me. And then I want to have electricity in my house, so that's really important. Then I spend a lot of time on my cell phone, so that's really important to me. And so I'm going to go through this list, and you put numbers for each thing, and then you end up with your list. And so let's say I only have enough money for my top 12 things on my list. But like I really want to go on this beach trip. But what if I spend a whole bunch of money on vending machines? I don't have enough money now for my beach trip because I spent that money on going to the vending machines. The problem is that I don't care as much about getting a bag of chips today as I did with going on that trip with my friends. But now I can't go on it because I spent it on vending machines. So anytime you spend money, it's taking away from something else. So you want to make sure that there's nothing else that's more important for you to spend money on before you spend money on something. And so one thing that naturally kind of helps me to do that is I start tracking everything that I spend. And then I keep track of it and I put it into categories. And so I want to make sure that my spending is reflecting what I care about. So, and it's the same thing with your time. You should really do this for both your money and your time because they're very closely linked. Because to make money, you're going to be spending your time working, doing something that's maybe not your first choice on doing. And so really you need to start thinking about your time is money. And your money is your time. So when you spend your money, you're also spending your time, the time it took to make that money. And so like, as an example, let's say for my time, if I track this, there's certain things that I care about doing. It's like, oh, I want to spend time with my family. I want to spend time with my friends. I want to do these things. And then very low on that list is watching YouTube videos on marble races. But there's been times where like I'll like go on YouTube and I'll, something will come up and it'll be like marble racing. Like, oh, what's that? And then like an hour or two later, I've been watching YouTube and I'm like, why did I just spend 2 hours doing this? Like, this is not anything that I care about. And it's the same thing with your money. You'll be like, why did I spend a bunch of money on, why did I spend $100 on vending machines this month? And now I don't have enough money for these other things that I care about. So I just check it, and then naturally, like I don't tell myself, oh, I'm only allowed to spend on these things, but I just notice where my money's going, and then I just think about, is that somewhere where I want it to go? And if it's not, then, in the future, I naturally will adjust. Other important thing is enough. So as I spend more, I get happier. So if I have absolutely nothing, no clothes, no food, nothing, I'm not happy. But as I spend more, I'm able to get fed and I get clothes and things like that. I become happy. But as I also spend more, it's a package deal. Because I'm not just getting whatever I buy, I'm also getting more time that I have to work. And you get to a point where it's like, hey, I have a car that gets me places. If I buy a fancier car, that would be nicer. And we're used to, as we spend more, we get happier. But what actually happens is after you get past enough, spending more makes you less happy. Because now, instead of hanging out with your friends with your fancy car, you have to spend more time working. And so now you can't even spend time with your friends with your fancy car or your fancy clothes or something like that. And you're like, man, I'm working all the time. I never even get to see my friends. I deserve a fancier house. And then you buy a fancier house, and now you have to work even more to cover that and all those expenses. And now you spend even less time doing the things you like. And you become less and less happy as you spend more until you spend so much that you're miserable. So we need to find the point that's called enough. All right. So quickly, investing your money, you'll probably want to put it into stocks or real estate. They're the two best places to invest. With stocks, you want to make sure you go into tax advantage accounts. You'll want an index fund, which basically buys a little piece of every company. So a total stock market index fund buys every company, or almost every company. S&P 500 buys the 500 biggest companies. This will allow you to not compete against professionals that have taken years of school and then spend 50, 70 hours a week researching stocks and doing stuff. Instead of competing against them, you just take all of their information that they use to compete with each other, and you take the end result, and then you just take that for free. And what happens is most professionals underperform the market, where you were able to just get the market returns for free by buying a little piece of every company. They actually do worse because they get charged fees every time they're trading. So as they're trading in and out of stocks, or hey, this one's better than this one, they're getting charged fees, they're paying taxes. And then a lot of normal investors, they do worse because of their emotions. So over on this right, we have this chart of the stock market. So these are the prices. And what happens is as people are making lots of money, that's when people will start hearing like, hey, my money, like I just made 100 grand in the stock market this year. You're like, man, I need to get into that. And so that's when they start buying. And then the market goes down, and let's say it loses $50,000. You saved up $100,000 over the last few years, and in a couple months, it's dropped down to $50,000, and you're like, whoa, I don't want to lose it all. I worked way too hard for this. And then they sell. And then the price goes back up, and they wish they hadn't sold. And then they hear they're like, oh, I'm not doing that again. And then all their friends are making tons of money, and it's way higher than where they were left off before. And they're like, oh, maybe I should get back into this. Like, I shouldn't have sold that last year. And the cycle repeats. So when you buy stocks, just know that they're going to go down a lot at some point, and you just keep on buying because basically you're getting them for sale. And so what we do is we do dollar cost averaging, which means just every paycheck we keep putting money in. And what's cool is when it's here, let's say I'm putting $500 in each paycheck. I can buy less stocks with that $500 when the price is high. And when the market goes down low, that same $500 buys more stocks because they're like half price.
So what's dollar cost?
So it's putting money in every paycheck or as you get it. So it's spreading, like buying as you go. And what's cool about it is that automatically you're going to do better than the market because you automatically buy less when it's expensive and more when it's cheap. The problem is we don't know when it's expensive and when it's cheap. With dollar cost averaging, we don't have to know. Asset allocation. So right now while I'm working, I put 100% in stocks. And that's because I don't have to pull it out. So when the market goes down, I don't have to buy, I don't have to sell here to pay for my living expenses. So when you're retired, though, you're going to have to be selling your stocks to, when you stop working, you're going to have to sell to pay for your living expenses. And so then it's important to diversify into bonds or cash or something like that, so that when the market's down here, I don't have to sell when it's really cheap. I can just sell my bonds, which you know, likely will be higher at that point. So I sell the bonds, which have been doing good, and buy, and so I can keep my stocks invested.
So what's
Asset allocation is how you divide up your money between stocks and bonds or real estate or things like that. Thank you. And then real estate, really quickly, FHA loan, you have, it allows you to buy a house for only 3.5% down. So if I wanted a $100,000 house, I only need to put in $3,500. So before you guys move out of your parents' house, save up your money for your down payment and buy your own house. What's cool about that is with real estate, it's very easy to use leverage, which is using other people's money. And with that, I can control a $100,000 house for only like $4,000. And so if that house goes up, let's say 5 years later, that house is worth $120,000. The bank that loaned me $96,000. I've slowly been paying that with my normal monthly payments. I only owe $90,000. I sell it, I just made $30,000. So you can make an insane amount of money using leverage like that. You just have to be careful that you don't overdo it. Like buying a house that's too big for you, or getting into a mortgage where you can't make the payments easily. So you want to make sure that you don't have to get foreclosed. And then the last thing, house hacking. If I buy that house and then I rent out some of the rooms to some of my friends, now my friends are paying for my mortgage. And so that's really good for you. And it's going to drop down your housing expenses a lot. The other thing you can do is with the FHA, you can get up to a fourplex. So 2 to 4 units in the house. You get a fourplex, rent out 3 units. That'll probably pay your whole mortgage and all of your expenses. And now you can live in the 4th unit for free. You know, and eventually, you know, you live there for a couple of years, you can rent out that 4th unit, and now you're making, you know, a really good profit on that house. All right. So that's it for this lesson. Yeah.